Okay, start here, call the meeting to order. It is now 5:02. Start with the adoption of the agenda. Start with administration, any additions from administration?
Mr. Reeve, if you could add a CAO in-camera report. There's some items that have arisen since the agenda. I would appreciate that. And I think that's it from administration in terms of any adjustments.
12.6, we have a heading for that one. Councillor Benedetto?
That would be item 12.6. Works.
He said CAO report.
Yeah,
Okay,
CAO.
CAO report. You, any additions from the council? Councillor Deane?
I'd like to add under, I don't know, new business, I guess, road allowance.
So 9.1?
Sure.
9.1 road allowance. Anything else from council or administration? With that, if I can get a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor Prestige?
Minutes was corrected in your compass, but we just want to make sure that everybody is aware of the correction under 12.3 salary review and grid adjustments, FOIP 17. The motion was the council receive the amended wage and salary categories as information and refer the matter to the Human Resources Committee, and that was moved by Councillor Deane. So I picked that up in the package that wasn't caught initially, but it was revised. So that's the one thing we did spot, and I spoke with the Reeve about the minutes of December 4th, and then it's a minor issue when we get to December 18th.
Okay, any other discussion on the amended minutes for December 4th? That's it. Councillor Wilhelm?
I'll motion that we accept the minutes from council meeting December 4th, 2024, as presented.
Is it already adjusted in our package here?
Adjusted in your package, that's correct.
Okay. With that, call the question, all in favor? That's carried. And 3.2, council meeting of December 18th, 2024. Mr. Benedetto?
So December 18th, just before the closed session, item number 12, the motion to move out of closed session was put under the items it should be before, because it gives the appearance you're passing motions in closed session, which you can't do, and that's not what happened. So just the motion to move out of camera should have been above section 12. So that's also been corrected in your package.
Okay, thank you. If I get a motion, Councillor Pilkin?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we adopt the minutes of council meeting December 18th, 2024 as amended,
I guess we presented, it's corrected in the package. Okay.
as presented.
Thank you. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you, and that's carried. See, we have a couple delegations. I know we're a couple minutes early, but Mr. Brown, are you in the, if you're ready to go, we can start you early instead of making you guys sit here and wait. So.
No, I appreciate it. Want me to stand, sit, or?
Table in front of there for you. It's yours. Make yourself at home.
I'm just gonna stand, okay, guys? I appreciate,
There is Mr. Reeve, if we could just make a couple comments and some clarifications here just before the delegation. if we could.
Okay.
The county's position, of course, in trying to deal with this difficult issue is to find erosion mitigation that's beneficial to the county's needs and its residents. And of course, this has to be balanced with the constraints of the county's fiscal capacity and funding ability. And we have and we will continue to pursue provincial grant funding. A decision on next steps has not been made, and in fact, it was a request of Mr. Brown and the next person to appear that they speak to council before any further decisions are made. So that's been respected. There's been no further decisions. We certainly tonight is the opportunity for the residents to provide their perspective as residents, and we understand this is near and dear to the heart, but certainly there are some things in the presentation that we may see slightly different, but that's not gonna be debated tonight. It's the opportunity for the residents to share their views being directly impacted. Thank you.
All right, with that, I'll just do a quick round around the table here so you know who we got. We'll start with Tanisha, if you wouldn't mind.
I'm Deane Ferguson, and I'm the Director of Corporate Services.
Jeff Zan, Director of Infrastructure Services with McNeil.
Alan Deane, Councillor for Division 3, the West Mountain Road area.
Jeremy Wilhelm, Whitecourt East.
Yeah, Peter Kilkin, I'm with Councillor for Freeman River, Goose Lake.
Dave Cush, I'm the Councillor for Anselmo and the Reef.
Chris Prestich, Division 5, Blue Ridge.
Devin Williams, Councillor for Forest and Montigny.
Paul Benedetto, interim CAO, and we've had some discussions.
And Tracy Williams, Veteran Assistant.
I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to our personal endeavor with what's going on. It's almost 2 years now. And to say the least, I mean, nothing personal, but it is getting frustrating for us. And I've got some stuff to share with you guys. If there's any questions, please wait till the end. I'll be open to some questions, but right now, I want to get this through and get your understanding of where we sit as residents of Old Ferry Road and some of our concerns. We also have some pictures that were dated at both the same time as the flood happened, and you'll be able to, we'll be putting them up pretty soon and just kind of go around throughout the different pictures that are available to get you a feel for some of the devastation that has happened there. As well, I want to invite each and every one of you guys, councilors and staff of Woodland County, to come down to our place, to have a look at the situation that we're in here. And it looks pretty bleak, it really does for us as individuals, especially older folks like us. We weren't counting on this to happen, you guys weren't either. But as a resident of a municipality, we always felt and feel that the municipality would have something in place or nowhere to go to alleviate some of these personal derogatory things that are happening to us right now. So I'll just go ahead and share some stuff with you guys.
Okay.
So again, I'm a resident of Old Ferry Road, Woodlands County. We're asking for clarification regarding a request for decision that was put forward to Council and Jeff Zang, Director of Infrastructure, concerning the devastation of overland flood of the McLeod River on June of 2023. The lack of communication over the last 2 years has left us with overwhelming unknown consequences and liabilities directly involving our family's safety, stability, future security of our personal properties, and the unknown stability of infrastructure. Again, we invite all you guys to come and have a look for yourself. Things got snow on them, but there's pictures that we can refer to as well. The references that will be done here are regarding council meetings December the 4th, August the 20th, and September the 30th. That's some of the information shared from those meetings. Number one, key concerns and requests. The clarification on flood categorization and funding during the December 4th council meeting with Mr. Zhang present stated the province would not fund damages caused by the June 23 overland flood, categorizing it as an erosion rather than a flood. I can be corrected on this, but this is the information I took from the last meeting. This interpretation has caused confusion among Old Ferry Road residents. After nearly 2 years of waiting, we seek clarity and direction to move forward with the recovery plan. At this point, I don't believe there's any remarkable changes that are in place. Traffic management on Old Ferry Road. Mr. Zhang's decision to restrict traffic, including school buses and emergency vehicle along a 350-meter section of RR 593A, or Old Ferry Road, during a potential future flood raises significant concerns. The June 23rd flood already caused closure of 3 other areas along Old Ferry Road. Introducing a 4th closure could completely cut off traffic and evacuation routes, leaving residents in a vulnerable position. We request clarification and reconsideration of this plan. Lack of transparency with the community engagement. In a closed meeting on August the 20th, Mr. Zhang and Ms. Jennifer Suderman requested input from individual residents about the flood mitigation options. While the emphasized consideration community-wide impacts, the absence of a town hall meeting at that time excluded a collective input. The fragment approach has left many of our residents feeling overlooked and uncertain. We propose holding an open community meeting to ensure transparency and inclusivity is in the decision-making. Property values and economic impact. The lack of a long-term flood mitigation plan has led us to a collapsed property value along Old Ferry Road. Prospective buyers will view the area as a high-risk investment, further compounding the residents' financial difficulties. We urge the county to prioritize sustainable flood defenses, such as constructing environmentally friendly barriers using soil-filled containers along the McNeil River to restore confidence in the area of the future. And of course, we're talking about using environmentally safe products as well. Urgency of long-term solution. With erosion continuing to damage the landscape. Let me say that again. With erosion continuing to damage the landscape, residents live in fear of the next flood. We ask the county to expedite plans for controlling the McNeil River flow to prevent future disasters. Additionally, we need assurance that our safety, livelihood, and property values will be safeguarded, allowing the current and future families to thrive in Woodland County. Call to action. We implore that the county act swiftly and transparently, addressing the ongoing crisis with a focus on sustainability solutions that benefit all residents. Conducting county businesses openly and with community confidence as the essential to rebuilding trust. An earlier discussion on August the 20th in a council chambers meeting was called for by Mr. Jeff Zhang, with some of the residents of Old Ferry Road called in at different times. Myself and my wife, Karina, were called in to discuss the options to resolve the flood and future floods in this area. Also attending the closed meeting was Jennifer Suderman. She had asked us at this time to cooperate with the county and confirm we had the best interest in mind for the whole community. Not having any personal gains in mind is what I believe she alluded to. Which, after the meeting was over and we left, we asked ourselves, why wasn't this a town meeting? Asking for information like that should have come from all of us, not just us, together. Yet they expect us to not discuss, in this closed meeting, not to discuss our personal consequences. That was a huge ask. Couldn't believe it. Anyhow, in 2022, our family discussed selling and downsizing our property in this year of 2025. And have reasonable funds to consider a future even at my age. We would have been left with some returns from our investment back then, not knowing what's in the future and what has happened at this point. In 2022, there's a much better chance for a stronger return on investment. Now a collapsed value has been created for all of us, all the residents of Old Ferry Road, because of the present state of affair and the unknown. The lack of responsible long-term protection form these elements. Anyhow, it's confirmed that it has become a collapsed value based on the unknowns. Not having a concrete plan from the county along with unstable grounds between us. In other words, in our case at this stage, and only our case for my personal reason, the land between us and the river is gone. There's over 100 feet of ground, trees, bushes that kept us away from the river. There's a point on Old Ferry Road there's about 7 feet of ground left to the road. Up where we are, if you could play those pictures, you'll see that at one time we had landscape in front of us. Now it's very weak soil, causing a bank that's eroding at this time, and the only bank that we have is the actual road itself, Old Ferry Road. These pictures, you'll see the erosion and flood across land on some of the parts of Old Ferry Road. You'll see the before, that right there, that picture is, no, sorry, the one down, sir. That's the picture before the flood. You can see it's not good, but there's lots of property in front of us, the river. This is after the fact. This shows you what happened to well over 100 feet of property that's gone down the river, and now we face a possible devastation the next time this happens. And it's going to happen. This shows part of the Rose closure just across from our place. There's another picture with a partial view of some of the land it's gone. You can still see some of the trees, but throughout the day you'll see as this goes through, there's nothing left there. There's a picture standing close to Old Ferry Road, and you can see that is a few feet away from the bank of the McLeod River. There's us standing close to the bank of the McLeod River, and there's just feet away from the very top of it going over and causing even more devastation. There's another picture again showing the trees gone. This is what we're looking at today. Again, this is our property, but there's all kinds of consequences from people up and down the river. The only reason I'm showing this is because it affects us, but our concern is everybody on Old Ferry Road. And I'll share with you why. I'm not sure, there should be some others there. There's a couple of pictures of school buses. That are impassable, they can't get through. And again, we're talking about putting a third closure on that road. What about emergency vehicles, fire vehicles? Can't get the kids out of school. What about evacuation? Not gonna happen. Happens again at the present state that we're in. Anyhow, so going back to my story here, it's not a story, it's the truth. At this point, there's a bunch of unstable ground between us and the McLeod River, and with no effort to divert the next flood, it's not going to help us any when it comes to resale value. A potential buyer would deem our place as a disaster, waiting for something to happen and have no value at all. With that concern, along with other property owners, without the protection of the county, making sure that this doesn't happen, diverting the traffic all around us ain't gonna do any good. You're gonna maybe serve a few, but very few. The right thing to do, the long-term thing to do is divert the river. And I don't believe you've done enough studies to figure out how to do this correctly. Because it doesn't take to stop, you gotta rebuild the bank. If you don't rebuild that bank, the water's gonna keep coming, basically. And that's not a study by me, that's just common sense. So let me finish up here for you guys. Anyhow, the thought came easy to us about what we should do as collectively as neighbors of Old Ferry Road. The fellow folks that live there, we all agreed to the same thing. Don't divert us all over the place and disrupt up to 12 different families. Fix the river. Like, just fix the river, divert it, build the banks, do something. I know you don't have any money, I know you talk about budgets, but I don't know what you've done with your money in the last 5 or 10 years. I would think the municipality would be prepared for some of these devastations of time to come, as it will come 5, 10, 15 years from now too. The mandate of the county is to not burden the future taxpayer of this community. If you do nothing, you're putting a burden on the future taxpayers that live in that area and that will move to that area if they'll even consider it. The point that stung a little bit, Mr. Zhang asked me and my wife at the meeting why we even considered building at that point on Old Ferry Road. Well, we didn't build, we bought the property, it was brand new. And at this time, and no time in the past and no time in the future that I can see, we are in a flood zone. We're not even close to it. But if this continues on, we will be in a flood zone. So I'm not sure why you asked that question, why I built there. You guys gave us the permit. If we shouldn't have built there, you shouldn't have given us a permit. Right? So now look after what's us and the neighbors, what's going on. I think that's what should be a consideration here. again, we love that spot there, guys. It's right on the open there. It's not a lot of traffic. The county looks after the roads and everything beautifully. I mean, this is an unknown thing, but being a layman of that area, we're thinking that you're prepared for the worst case scenario to some degree, or there's funds available, depending on how the wording of the funding that's asked goes. I don't completely understand that, but I'm sure there's a way that you can help put some clarity back into the folks that live along that area. Most of us are struggling these days because of what's happening financially and emotionally. Now you add this unknown, we have very little confidence on what the county's next move is. After 2 years, or close to 2 years, we were hoping there would be something that you give us a little light at the end of the tunnel. Again, the pictures, if you want to go back through them or you want to see them after, show
We got a
exactly.
few more minutes here, so.
Sorry?
We only got a few more minutes left for the delegation, so.
All right.
Just don't really have time to go back through all the pictures. that you
Okay,
saw.
no problem. Anyhow, we trust our leaders will commit to making all areas of Old Ferry Road safe. So we can live together as families, have the confidence in knowing our safety and livelihood is protected as we deserve, and the future of our families to come as well. We are again asking, don't leave us alone. Don't leave us on the island out there. Please look at the big picture. There must be something you can do that makes sense in different strategies of time frames. Again, my personal problem with this is you're not helping do anything. So my property is worth zero. I was planning on retiring here. I can't now. My investment's none of your problems, I know, but my investment was in the house. Guess what the house is worth now? Zero. Based on the obligation of the possible next flood and it being devastation. I follow your mission statement, guys, and you guys talk about what you will do to ensure the safety of our families and look after the future generations of this community and all communities in Woodland County. I'm hoping you've done something different than we're aware of. I realize there's been some closed meetings, so we don't know what's going on. So all I can do is come to the meeting and share with you our concerns as the future changes drastically for us as we go down the road. Again, I must emphasize number one thing, without controlled flow of that direction of the McLeod River, this dilemma we are in will only become an uncalled disaster. Please give us some direction, clarification, some hope that you're going to do something that'll save us and maybe help other folks in the future. It's unbearable to have to deal with this frustration and financial burden. Anyhow, with great respect, on behalf of my wife Corinna and the folks of Old Ferry Road, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Do you have any questions?
I do want to say, I know this is going to be frustrating for the residents in the area. I personally don't live there. I'm not affected by it. But as somebody on council, this is something that has been talked about multiple times. I do understand we have a lot of, closed session meetings. We've had discussions on this. We have had a lot of discussions with the province. We've had a lot of discussions with our engineering partners on what we can try to do and what's the most cost effective and what works with it. And one of the, difficulties we're having is just how the province is classifying the flooding in regards to how the grant fundings are applied. So it is something that we are actively working on because we do understand the impacts to the residents, and it is something that is just not kind of shoved in the corner and waiting for.
No, and I don't believe that, Dave.
No, and I understand.
Yep.
It is something, especially I know Councillor Burrows is supposed to show up here in a little bit. He's on his way back from another meeting. He's online now, and as somebody from the resident, that this has been something he's been very passionate about in a lot of the meetings too, is what we can do and what we have to try to do, and the residents and the taxpayer. It's the biggest thing, making sure everybody's safe, making sure everybody can enjoy their properties, but trying to also come up with solutions based off of what's been presented to us that is also feasible. And that's kind of the hard part that we're trying to balance.
And forgive me for jumping in, Dave. So
Yeah.
with us doing nothing at this corner, basically shutting part of Old Ferry Road off, that's a slap in the face. Why would we even consider that? Endangering more people. I mean, that road isn't safe to start with. Now we're gonna have 4 possible closures on that road. That's the only thing that we're gonna do? And that's why I'm speaking out. There's gotta be more to this. I mean, let alone having a stand out there with issues with finances and no property values and all those things. I mean, we wanna work with you, but we gotta come to these meetings and tell you, like, this is right here, this is killing us, guys. Every day I look outside and I'm thinking, where am I gonna go? I'm 77 years old. You guys aren't gonna help me. I mean, personally. So I gotta speak out and say, like, help me sell the house. Put something up that makes sense, not only for me, but for the rest of the residents as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Bruce, quick one, then we'll move on to the next.
So I've taken it upon myself to go and I walked that whole strip along the river there. It is devastating. But the fix is not gonna happen quickly. It's gonna take time. The engineering alone could take a couple years. So as hard as it is, it's gonna take some patience.
With that, we do have the next delegation time here. If I get a motion to accept the first presentation as information. Councillor Coogan?
Now, I make a motion that council receive the presentation from Mr. Brown as information.
Thank you, Councillor. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you.
Mr. Reid, we just have a clarification before the start of the next one as well again.
Okay, you come to the table if you like there, Patricia.
Can I ask a question of administration?
Just before your, Councillor Wilhelm?
Chair to administration, I'm trying to recall a month ago, but out of that December 4th meeting, was it? We had been given a series of options. I don't believe the option we chose was to close that road. The motion was not to go with that option as far as I remember, so I'm not sure where that narrative is coming from.
That was from the last meeting, sorry, sir.
But that's my recollection. The last meeting, we didn't make a motion to choose that option. I could be wrong,
The
but
final meeting, or sorry, the final answer, but that was a simple answer. That's what we're gonna do for now. You can go back over the meeting.
I'll have to check it, but my recollection of that meeting was the decision was not to close the road.
I think it was one of the options. but I think
Yeah, I mean, there was a request from our stakeholders, owners, and delegations tonight that there not be any decisions, and that's been respected. So, I mean, this issue will be coming back to council later, et cetera, so we can clarify anything at that time. Just before Patricia is ready to go here, we just need to clarify that there was a typo in the July 17th, 2024 RFD, and the RFD made reference to option M3 being the pre-disaster functional state, in which M3 should have read S3, which is a $2.9 million option. So you'll note in the list of options, there was no option named M3, and you know that's led to the interpretation of discrepancy to mean a $6.1 million option, which is not the case. So just to clarify that. And, you know, again, the county is trying to work at finding a long-term solution. There's no way of not having the challenge of the financial constraints, and we continue to pursue opportunities for provincial grant funding to try to help. And again, there's no decision on next step as we were requested. Our delegate Patricia has made some comments about the Municipal Government Act. Our views and interpretation of some of that legislation is different, but we have no intention of debating any of that. And we appreciate she'll be expressing some heartfelt views tonight as a property owner.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Benedetto. Assuming we don't need to go around the table again for you, Patricia?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. For anybody who doesn't already know me, my name is Patricia McNeil. I live on Old Ferry Road. And first, I can kind of jump in and just maybe speak to Councillor Wilhelm on the question you had mentioned. I think where that had originally come from was when the December 4th meeting package was initially released, it had a recommendation of potentially doing nothing. And I know at that time, that was one of the reasons that I had reached out as well to the CAO and asked if to make a delegation tonight, and if any decisions could be held from that meeting until we would have the opportunity to speak to council. So that's probably where that part came from. And also, hopefully with my presentation, it kind of, I think Reeve Cush had created a good segue when you said it's difficult for council to make solutions on what's been presented. And that's a big part of what I plan on bringing up here tonight is I agree. I feel that with what's been presented to council, you guys have not been given adequate information to make a good long-term decision for the region. Okay, and so also thank you, Mr. Benedetto, for the correction on that, which affects kind of the numbers. And with what I had presented, it was meant as a hypothetical exercise with this cost benefit analysis, just in showing that there is potential for this to massively impact dozens of properties downstream of this area. And it's not something that's just been a few properties. So that was what that exercise that's in your package was meant to illustrate, is to kind of give a broader, you know, there's more to this than just meets the 3 properties or 10 properties in the area. Okay, so I chose to purchase my property in the county 19 years ago. At the time, it was a new spec home on 5 acres of bare mud with no trees. Over the years, I've watched the land grow and mature, forming a deep bond with my home and the community. And one of my greatest joys is seeing my grandchildren play under the oak tree that my son and I planted years ago. Now, that being said, it's a legacy I would have hoped that they'd be able to pass on to their kids. And I am biased in that I am a property owner out there, and I don't want to lose my home or the ability to sell it and be able to get a comparable home somewhere else if the need arises. That being said, I also understand the responsibility that each councillor has to serve their constituents, and that I have family living in the county, and I wouldn't advocate for overspending to look after a couple of nostalgic landowners that would have an impact on everybody in the county for years to come. That being said, valuing financial prudence and long-term planning, the intent, again with the hypothetical, was to illustrate that it's not just an issue affecting a few residents. If not properly managed, it could have long-lasting, significant financial implications. Now, the previously recommended actions, July 17th, when the information was brought to council, the recommendation was L2C from administration, realign the road while minimizing major property impacts. I would also like to add a couple of caveats here. Number one, I respectfully am grateful to council for that meeting in the questioning and the line of questioning that you had for administration and wanting to see some transparency in the process going forward and the steps that you took to make that happen. Also, I understand Mr. Zhang, as the infrastructure director, literally just started the month that this engineering had come in with fires to put out all over the county. You know, so I do recognize that it's something that there wasn't a lot of resources and time that he would have had. It wasn't like he was here for the 2 years prior while we were waiting for information on the project. Okay, the affected properties, and I guess my issue with this is the while minimizing major property impacts, this one particular one. So it says the affected properties would be a minimum of 11. When you're looking at the road alignment here, and with what they had proposed, in order to get access, land acquisition, and so on, 11 properties, when you're only dealing with essentially one subdivision in that area, certainly doesn't seem minimal to me. And also, the estimated cost at $3 million, including the $600K for property acquisition. Okay, the plan also did not account for key issues such as impacts on landowners, relocation of utilities, or the effect of natural springs that have caused problems in that area there for decades. So it's been something that I'm sure, you know, people around the county have known for a lot of time. The springs on Old Ferry have cost a lot to deal with over the years. Now, if you look at this map, and some of the things that I brought up about it were, is you can see, it's a little bit difficult to tell on the computer screen, but these are the exact same maps you guys have seen in your packages in July and in December. And when we had seen this, the first thing, you know, when a person's looking at it, number one, it's heavily impacts many property owners. It has things like, when you look at the Browns residence, which is located in the kind of bottom left corner when you come down from the airport, even something like this, when you see the rationale of them tripling the length of their driveway, it really, when the road is coming right to the area, when you look at this, you really have to question the judgment of whoever put this together. And I realize whenever I ask questions about it, I was told they're just lines on a map. So anyway, that being said, that was the proposed plan of acceptance. A true minimal impact plan would have involved a flat, straight access road across the subdivision, affecting only 2 or 3 properties. So if you go to the next picture, so it shows that one there. Literally, you can see where if the plan was then to abandon that section of road along the river, you could literally put a small access road across there that would affect potentially only Brown's property and either Samard's or Pepper's property. So that, to me, if somebody had produced it as a potential minimal impact, at least you could understand. But, and it's on a flat stretch, not involved with the springs and the elevation and erosion of the hill that are such a problem in that area. So on December 4th, the original council package, then that second recommendation initially was to do nothing and barricade the road when needed. This section of road acted as a dam and held back floodwaters from reaching the other side of the road and lower elevation properties. This is something a lot of people aren't aware of. And the failure to have this damming effect in a similar flood in the future will not only introduce floodwaters into previously unaffected properties in Eagle Ridge Estates, it will also increase the volume of water entering the flood path behind the homes along the east side of the subdivision, resulting in increased floodwater along the entire valley area, at least up until the natural exit point the floodwaters chose to return to the river on the far east end of Old Ferry Road in 2023, which we haven't seen pictures of that. That's where the access point, the water had crossed, and it actually didn't take the pavement, so we didn't have to repair in that area, and other than, I guess, the ditches, but it had crossed over in that area. So, and that was the third flooded spot in that zone. Okay. Creating increased risk to damage affecting up to 50 properties comprising an assessed value exceeding 22 million. And that's something I also think a lot of people don't realize. When you look at the land in that area and you follow along and you check the properties, now, would it flood all 50 properties? Of course not. But when I say affecting 50 properties, it affects either their driveways, their access, or increases flooding somewhere on their property. And that's where those 50 properties come from. And I pulled all the information for that off the GIS system, and I have all the data to back that up if that's something anybody's interested in looking at. So the next picture that you see here essentially is just kind of showing the highlighted line between some of the low point of where the road acted as a dam and prevented flooding from that western end of Eagle Ridge Estates. The next picture is, it's a little bit hard to see with this, but this was before the floodwaters had peaked. But you can see from the elevation this is my fence line that's along on the, it'd be on the north side of the road. And you can see the top of the fence posts basically, and elevation's a little bit wonky to look at there, but what I'm trying to illustrate is to show that the elevation on the north side of the road is lower than the land was on the south side of the road. So the next ones are a picture taken from the second floor in the house. The views vary, but it's essentially just kind of showing, if you note the corner, the left corner of the wooden fence, you can see where there used to be land. They actually used to hay that section of land on the opposite side of the river. So, and take round bales off of it prior to this happening, and now that's gone. So the next picture is the flood hazard map, and just illustrating that none of the properties within the within that subdivision and along the section of road that that's proposed to be closed were on the flood hazard map. So, okay, and just bear with me. Okay, so quickly, I just kind of want to scoot through the project timeline. And of course, the flood event was in June 23, engineering recommendations completed June 24, July 17th council meeting, there was 15 options presented for evaluation. Recommendation L2C. Council requested public engagement with area residents, and the infrastructure director highlighted the need for detailed engineering plans beyond lines on a map. He emphasized the importance of attaining detailed plans to know the exact impact to landowners. Council motioned for a public open house to explore realignments options, and note that motion was not recorded in the meeting minutes. So that might be something you guys want to correct for your minutes. August 24, mid-month, I contacted Mr. Zhang about the updated engineering report and town hall meeting. He estimated the meeting would be in September, said he'd reach out to me when the details were available. A few days later, on August 16th, I received a LinkedIn message from Jen Sunderman asking if I was the Patricia living on Old Ferry Road and identifying herself as a consultant working with Jeff, stating she didn't have a proper contact for me and needed to schedule an in-person meeting. Mr. Brown indicated she had contacted him the same way, even though he had emailed Jeff the week prior and his contact information included in that email as well. Great she was resourceful, but curious that she needed to be. August 20th, the consultation meeting, I was told no bank mitigation options would be considered. I was asked about cooperating with the neighbors. I explained some concerns I had about the inadequacy of the engineering report and info presented. For example, too many options were presented to council, prices were attached, yet there were no accounting for moving utilities, topography, details on land acquisition as to the price per hectare, or whether any compensation would be included. L2C causing disruptions to more than 10 properties, etc. Jeff reiterated that the proposed realignments were just lines on a map. Overall, the meeting purpose seemed unclear to me. September 11th council meeting, closed session under FOIP. September 30th, the town hall meeting. There were no planned presentations or discussions that one would expect in a town hall meeting. The drawings were all replicas of those presented at the July 17th council meeting, with no new engineering data as requested by Jeff, and the drawings were taped to the council tables along like here so we could just walk around and look at them. But it was the exact same information as previously provided, which wasn't what we were led to believe in Jeff asking for further engineering before the town hall. In addition to the contact info, attendees were given a questionnaire with 3 poorly structured questions. They were told the form must be completed in person before they left, and only 1 sheet per household, although nowhere on the sheet does it ask the number of persons in the household. Attendees were asked, how often do you currently use Old Ferry Loop Road to get to work or school? This question didn't consider important details needed to assess traffic on the 350-meter stretch of Old Ferry Road, such as how many drivers live in each household, how many people use the road daily, or whether this section is actually used. If the goal was to evaluate traffic volume, it misses the mark by ignoring key factors like the number of vehicles, nearby residents from subdivisions like Baxter Heights Phase 3, and other contributors to road use. What is your preferred option out of the options presented? Essentially, they said it was lines on a map. We weren't given any information to really make a preferred option. Do you have any comments regarding options presented? Attendees were given a single line on a sheet that they were told that they had to fill out here before they left. So this approach didn't allow for meaningful reflection, discussion with other household members, or thoughtful input. Additionally, no contact information was provided for residents to submit additional comments to consultants after the meeting, which came across as unprofessional and dismissive of community input. While these questions, I can skip that part. November, the LGSG grant application. I communicated multiple times with Jeff Zhang and CC'd Councillor Burrows about the critical need to apply for the LGSG grant, which now the numbers are whatever it is, but potentially it's a grant that requires non-matching funds for emergent issues. And I acknowledged the resource challenges because it was budget time and I realized everybody was short-staffed and very busy. But the risk of inaction, flood damage, legal liabilities, property value loss hindered development. Despite urgency and providing a grant template, no confirmation was received that the application would proceed. On the eve of the grant deadline, after hearing nothing for a month, basically, I contacted Reeve Cush and reported, who checked into it the next day, reported administration told him the deadline only applied to the portion of the grant that was not relevant to us and that there would still be an opportunity to apply. So on the council meeting December 4th, the initial package released with we covered that. In regard to mention of the grant, based on the interactions, I know it was reported in there that we're not eligible for the grant because it's not an emergent issue. And of course, my response to that would be, basically with any of the interactions that I've had with administration and the general opinion that the bank stabilization will not be addressed, I expect that it was not conveyed as an emergent need. And that's something that I would have some concern about. And that very potentially could have resulted in the negative response. If the grant writer is indeed correct that the deadline does not apply for emergent issues, then hopefully this application can be revisited. In conclusion, the engineering package is inadequate at best. The public engagement process lacked transparency, professionalism, and meaningful new information. Failure to secure the bank to pre-2023 flood conditions increases the risks to dozens of properties. Any properties that are damaged due to the municipality's breach of duty or negligence are subject to seek compensation under various clauses of current Alberta legislation, which I expect will be addressed in the closed session that's on today's meeting agenda regarding consultation of legal responsibilities. I'd seen that part in there. And which I'm glad to see that that is being addressed, because obviously if there's going to be, litigation issues is something we want to avoid. I need not be an industry expert to see that council has not been provided adequate, accurate information to make a quality decision in this matter. As a call to action, my request is that council consider directing administration to expedite the process of hiring an experienced expert consultant to create a proper impact cost analysis on going forward with and without bank stabilization. Then, based on the results, make an informed decision in regard to safeguarding the properties and their values, or choose an intelligent realignment of the road and appropriate levels of compensation for all affected landowners downstream of the western end of Old Ferry Road. Thank you for your time and consideration. Does anybody have any questions?
Not a question, just a comment that I want to point out, because and nothing against your presentation, but for some of the people who might not kind of understand on some of the grant funding and how that works with the province.
Absolutely.
Is some of the grants, we'll say on the like for the bank stabilization we put in here for the DRP. Some of that we have to pay for ahead of time to have the funds, and we get reimbursed after the fact with invoices and stuff that went out. That can take years from the province. We'll say the first one we put through, I think it was the 19 flood, that was
2018 flood, we finally received final compensation in 2024.
so, and that again, to that point, just with this, and these are some of the issues that council is trying to come up with, is even if you put the money out for some of these and put the applications in, you still have to have the funds up front to be able to do the project. And on top of that, just because you apply for a grant, whether it's the LGSG, the DRP, some of our other infrastructure grants, anything we put out for, doesn't mean you qualify, or doesn't mean you qualify at the level that you applied for.
Of course.
Unfortunately, that's a provincial decision. We've come into that even last year. We're trying again with infrastructure on our airport. It is something, again, that is utilized heavily by the province in times of firefighting. We are one of 7 tanker bases, and we are one of the most actively used tanker bases in the province. But they've turned us down now a couple times when it comes to having your hand out, asking for help and support for funding for rehabilitation of the runway, which is realistically a crucial infrastructure piece that supports the province and supports kind of a regional development. And I'm not, trying to compare the two. All I'm saying is, as far as grant funding, like, if a person could, it's almost like buying a lotto ticket. You're not guaranteed to win when you fill it out and put it in there. It would be nice ahead of time on some of these if we could have direction from the province and understanding and what they'll do or what they don't do. But a lot of the time at the municipal level, we don't get that until after the fact. Any other comments? We've got a couple more minutes on this and we've got to wrap it up here.
Good presentation.
It was a great presentation. I'll take the comment there from Mr. Brown.
Yes, so what do we do as individuals in the meantime? You guys can't afford to do anything, and I understand that's a municipal decision that has to happen. But us, we're left out on an island. Even if you decide to divert, go around my property, past property, my value is still down. My safety and livelihood is destroyed because it doesn't do me any good as a private owner. There's gotta be some other answers, guys.
I can hear what you're saying. I do. You're not falling on deaf ears there. I know that's why we've had multiple discussions with administration, try to bring back other ideas and other options. This isn't today either going to be one of the last times we're having these discussions. I'm sure administration's going to take this feedback and probably, have more of a consultation and come back, and this will come back as another agenda item in the future. And I'm going to assume, I can't obviously speak to it right now, but if we end up with more information or something else there should be more public consultation as we go forward before we make any decisions.
We want to cooperate.
At this point, we haven't really made any decisions because we unfortunately from council, I don't believe we really know which way to go. Councillor Burrows, I see you had your camera on there. Do you have a comment?
No, I just wanted to thank the folks that presented, and I know how difficult this is right now, and this is something that I keep going down there and looking at that area, trying to figure out a path forward. So I really want to appreciate council and administration for taking the time to make sure this delegation went ahead as well. So, and thank you again to the presenters.
Thank you very much, Patricia, and thank you again, Mr. Brown, for your time and for residents who came. Like we've said multiple times, but unfortunately, we're trying to do the right thing here. We're just trying to do it within the capacity we have and with the help we can receive from the province. And I know administration has been very active in engaging the province on different alternatives and what we can do. I'm hoping that they can hear a plea before this become more of an issue than it currently is. So with that, if I can get a motion to accept Patricia's delegation. Councillor Wilhelm.
Sorry, I gotta look up the wording here. Apologize. I will make a motion that council receives the presentation from Ms. McNeil for information.
Thank you, Councillor. With that, we'll call the question. All in favor? And that one's carried. Thank you very much. Let's see where now we're in. Do you want to keep going, Council, or want to take a break?
Can I go to the bathroom real quick?
Okay. We will take, say 5 voice from 10. We'll take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back at 5 after 6. Just let us know when we're Okay, it's 7 after. We're coming back, just making sure, Councillor Burrows, you can hear us. You're good to go?
Oh, no, he says he's just phoning in, so.
Okay,
Dropping out. coming back
he's
in.
dropping out, coming back. I'll give him just a minute here before we get going. I know he wants to hear the discussion on the airport, so.
I just have an initial comment when we're in, before we turn over to Jeff and Steve, resident experts.
I'm in again.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Burrows. With that, we'll start with 8.1. I guess, Mr. Hollett?
If I could start, Mr. Reeve, as you know, we've been working with council to try to provide more comprehensive financial information of these various county operations, so you understand where they stand. And Jeff and Steve have put a lot of work into here in terms of analyzing all those revenue streams for the presentation tonight. So just want to acknowledge Jeff and Steve for the work that put in there, and trust that council will find this overall revenue and expense picture useful.
Okay, thank you. Whenever you're ready, sir.
Good evening, Reeve and members of council, sorry. During the December 18th, 2024 council meeting, council asked information on landing fees and fuel flow surcharge, CYZU, and other airports. Administration has prepared a presentation to show council the findings and also provide a 5-year summary of airport financials. So slide 1 shows the revenue and expenses for the airport for the last 5 years, and also the budget numbers for 2025. Just note 2024 is a projected, since the final numbers were not available when we made this. Anybody have any questions looking at this one before I?
Councillor Deane?
It's not so much through the chair to Mr. Hollett and Mr. Zhang, it's not so much a question, but it's a comment, not new information for you, but for anybody that might be listening to this or watching this online. You know, when you look at the expenses on this bar graph that you've presented, so predicted for 2024 expenses of $1.4 million. When you look at the county's overall budget, you know, we're spending 3 times as much money on the airport as we do on policing. We're spending more on the airport than we do on our entire rec budget. So I just want people to understand the scope of the expenses involved. And like I said, it wasn't a question, it was just a comment.
To make a comment, looking at the expenses for the airport include depreciation for structures, buildings, amortization, and internal temperature transfers. So these numbers look big, but actual cash numbers are considerably lower than what these indicate. These are actual full coverage or full cost numbers. Any more questions with regards to? So for slide number 2, this is a revenue breakdown for 2024. We have our fuel flowage of just over 10,000, airport landing fees of 28,000, miscellaneous revenue of 33,000. That is sale of our topsoil pile that we have at the airport from when we've done construction. We took all the topsoils, made it into a pile, and we have a company with a contract that is actually selling that and paying us a percentage of it. It's also, when we did that 7-lot subdivision, it's our Fortis pays a rebate from Fortis. And last year we had some operating grants of about 157,000, and our lease agreements of about $98,000. So it's kind of goes over what our revenues are for the airport. Any questions?
Councillor Wilhelm?
Just with regards to the operating grant, is that a fixed amount of money that we get every year, or does it fluctuate depending on conditions? The operating grant?
It depends on what we're looking at doing at the airport.
Okay.
So this one, last year we had that $78,000 grant for looking at a couple of different initiatives that we could do at the airport. And that's also a grant from capital costs.
Okay.
For a couple of the projects that we were doing.
Thank you.
Councillor Burrows?
Yeah, so I just want to clarify the 157, that's the operating grant, and then you have lease agreements at 98,745. So that's just lease agreements, or is that taxation, land tax as well, property tax?
Through the chair to councillor, that would be just lease and any parking agreements that I have with, say for Chevron, which now has been sold. It's just for land purposes. No taxes are included in that number.
Okay, so, and I made the case for this when we were originally talking about this. If you were to close the airport, the businesses that operate out there would leave, and you would no longer be collecting commercial tax rates on the lands that are at the airport. So the commercial tax, or the taxes that are collected on lands and properties at the airport, need to be included in this calculation. I know that it goes into general revenue, but again, because this source of revenue would cease to exist if the airport closed, I think it's only fair to put it in the numbers.
To that, just curious, I know, Ganesha, do you possibly have an idea what the numbers are as far as taxation out of the airport?
Not offhand.
Okay.
I can get that information.
And through the chair to councillor, yes, I agree. And even lease properties also contribute to taxes as well.
Exactly, yeah. Thank you.
So to that comment, and if we're looking at actual revenue summary, if we're not calculating the taxes then that are a revenue source out of there, I know it goes into general revenue, but that's still revenue out of that airport. Whether we're putting in the big pool or it keeps in a little pool, that still should be part of our revenue calculation.
To the chair, I agree. My numbers came off of my reports that I get with regards to my expenses and my revenues. So that's what I based it as this. I didn't have a chance to go through and break property by property down to include taxes into this.
All right. Councillor Prestidge?
Yes, through the chair to council and administration. We have been asking for this, well, John and I have been asking for this ever since we got on council. And the administration at the time flatly refused to give us that information. So if we can get it, it would be great.
I'd like to at least thank you, Mr. Lee. This is more than we have seen. So I do appreciate what we have here in front of us. I'm sure that at a future council meeting or even an email, we'll probably get those other numbers to clarify. Mr. Bendido?
Yeah, Mr. Reeve, at another opportunity, we can look at reasonably, I'll call them airport influenced economic development, or businesses that strategically located by airports, so we can look at that. This primarily tonight is to look at those revenue streams, because we have a lease issue that we have to give some consideration. So these costs are the ones that show the picture based on the airport operation. We will get you the information around the property tax side, but that doesn't affect the core operation of the airport. So we wanted to get these numbers in front of you first, because these numbers are pertinent to that other discussion that we started and we have to continue with tonight. So we understand, and we'll try to come up looking through the area structure plan in the area to come up with some strategy down the road, but these are the core numbers tonight in terms of the hardcore airport operations, and we'll see what we can do about the other part to add that on, but that's gonna be down the road.
Councillor Burrows, you have a follow-up there?
Sorry, I just had one other clarification as well. So through the chair to administration, you have fuel flowage here, which says fee applies to all fuel dispensed on the airport from public fuel systems, private systems, tankers, or drums. Local helicopter operators are exempt for fees on their base. So it's really only the itinerant aircraft that are paying the fuel flowage, right? There is no fuel flowage to local operators.
Through the chair to Councillor, were you looking at the last page with regards to another airport? Because for us, our fuel flowage fee does not apply to any local operator, and it's that 10,443, I believe, was just fuel sales to forestry.
Okay, so that's about 208,000 liters. Okay.
Councillor Coughlin, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, through the chair to Steve. You have listed here at the 296,925. Is that depreciation in the expense column? Or I'm not quite sure.
Through the chair to Councillor, that is correct. That is depreciation of the county assets.
And that is, does that include this runway surface and the equipment, or what's the breakdown there?
Through the chair to Councillor, that is our buildings, the terminal, runway surface, runway lights. That will not include the equipment.
Okay.
Councillor Deane?
Through the chair to Councillor Burrows, your question about the fuel flowage and the landing fees, were you reading from that summary? And from this, it looks to me like what you were quoting is attributed to the Slave Lake Airport?
It is, but I'm wondering how ours operate and the fuel flowage at the other airports. So does the fuel flowage apply to every liter of fuel off the field, including local operators at other airports, or is it just itinerant like we are?
Through the chair to Councillor, it varies from airport to airport. I was able to get some of that exact way that they do it from some airports. Some other airports, I was unable to get the exact information on who they charge it through. Some airports I know will charge every liter that is on inside the airport fence. Some are very selective on who they actually charge it to.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Deane?
So, through the chair to Mr. Hollis, so just for clarity, in the note section of that summary that you put together there,
Yes.
the first 5 lines under note, those apply to our airport, and then the next section applies to High Level, and the next section applies to Slave Lake, et cetera?
Through the chair to Councillor, that is correct.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Any other questions, comments?
Is there anybody have any more questions with regards to our expenses?
Not seeing any there.
So the last one is the summary of a few airports that I was able to get in contact with, either directly or through HMRL, who had a bunch of this information. It was able to provide it for me. So we've contacted 7 other regional airports. 6 of them charge both landing fees and fuel flowage surcharges. 1 airport does not charge landing fees, but does have a fuel flowage surcharge. The rates and how they're applied vary from airport to airport. There's no kind of standard that I can see through any different airport on how they charge things. CYZU is the airport, our airport fees are some of the lowest fees for fuel flowage surcharge among the 8. CYZU landing fees are also among the lowest of the surveyed airports as well. And most of the airports are equivalent to our numbers of movements. Because I believe last year we were 21,800 movements plus or minus. So anybody have any more questions on the landing fees?
Just checking. Councillor Burrows, do you got any more questions, concerns, comments?
No, thank you.
Councillor Wilhelm?
Through the Chair to Administration, will we be looking to making any adjustments on our fees for this year? I know we've got a discussion around the lease agreement coming up, but seeing the information in front of us, is there any push from administration to continue to review the fees and maybe make adjustments for 2025?
Through the Chair to Councillor, that is one of the things that I was looking at bringing to the Airport Advisory Committee, is kind of to get their feeling on how to proceed. And personally, yes, I would like to kind of do a fee review and make some adjustments if adjustments are necessary.
Great, thank you.
To that point, when was the last time we had a fee review out there?
Through the Chair, I believe for landing fees was when they came in effect, and I think that's going back to about 2018, 2019, when the previous manager, just after he started. And the fuel flowage, that was, it's been a long time.
Good, thank you.
Actually, I do have one other question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Councillor Burrows.
The other airports that we're comparing to, Steve mentioned that they're similar in movements, and they're municipal airports, I believe, at least most of them are. So their operations expenses would be available as well. I'm wondering if we look at comparison on the operations costs as well, airport to airport.
Thank you. Would administration be able to look for that information and bring back at a later time?
We'll see what we can look at. We acknowledge that we've got some fees in place that have not been reviewed in recent time. And so we're going to have to keep working away at that and looking at where we're at and discuss with you. And in this case, the Airport Advisory Committee, which is very important, and to come up with some recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Wilhelm?
Through the Chair to Administration, is there any currently planned airport advisory meetings set up for 2025? I don't know if there was even one in 2024, so I would press administration to potentially get something booked sooner rather than later.
Yeah, we're going to start looking at dates and that are far enough out that fit first of all council's calendar, and then the dates you tell us that you're available. Those will be the dates we float on the public members. And we're just regrouping from budget and all of that too. But yes, it's on our radar, and yes, it's overdue. So we absolutely acknowledge it's well overdue.
Thank you. Councillor Prestige?
Yes, on our meetings, right now, it's the infrastructure director and that calls the meetings. All our other boards, it's up to the board to call the meeting. Why is this one different?
We have to take a look at the terms of reference.
Yeah, I don't have an immediate answer for you. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that sitting here.
Like,
That's the
it
first
should
time it's
be
been
our-
mentioned to me.
Our chair of the board that calls the meetings.
Yeah, so we'll work it out. Our concern would be that dates are picked where the council representatives have availability, because you've got a number of commitments in your calendar. So we'll sort that out. The nuance that you just pointed out, I've not even had that mentioned to me before, so we'll look at,
Maybe
we'll go forward path.
to that point, that I know our next GP is probably full, but maybe the GP after that would bring the terms of reference of the airport advisory committee to council, and we can have a look at the terms and reference of how they meet and when they meet, and maybe we need to do more of a structured meeting, whether it's every 2 months or 3 months, or, something along those lines, but have a set amount of dates so that the committee is actually meeting and being more active with the airport.
Yeah, there's a few items on your next GNP, so the one after that would make sense. And yeah, we hear you and we agree with a lot of your concerns.
Councillor Wilhelm?
I'll make a motion here in a sec to the RFD. I was going to piggyback on what you said. I totally agree it should come to an GMP at some point, but maybe it should actually go to the Whitecourt Advisory Committee first for a review of the terms of references before it comes to a GMP, just because they'll be the ones most affected by that terms of reference change, right?
That's fair.
And with that being said, I'll motion that council accepts the airport revenue and expense overview presentation for information.
Thank you, Councillor. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you, John. That one's passed. New business, 9.1, road allowance. Councillor Deane, you brought this one up?
Yeah, thanks. Through the chair to council and to administration, this question, I brought this up to council in December, stating that there was a resident in Division 3 that wanted permission to clear trees away from the fence line. So this resident has a grazing lease that abuts a road allowance. And he's free to clear the trees on his side, on the grazing lease. He's got permission from the province to do that. On the road allowance, he needs permission from the county. And his first request was met with just a no. And so then, he appealed to me to see if, there was any wiggle room in that. So I brought it to council, and at that time, Mr. Zhang pledged to work with the landowner and get a better understanding of what the situation was. Now, that was right in the middle of budget time, so administration was tapped out when it came to time. So sometime last week, Paul from infrastructure met with the resident, and they came to an understanding of what the project was. So this resident just wants to, clear a buffer of trees so that deadfall and mature trees don't fall on the fence, and have his cattle get out and endanger the public. So he was looking for anywhere between 5 and 10 meters of a buffer so that logging equipment could get down that section. I went out and had a look today. And the reason I went today was the resident received an email from infrastructure saying that he could clear a 2 meter right away. Well, 2 meters, you can't get a skidder down there. You can't get any type of logging equipment. There was a concern from administration that by clearing the right-of-way, or the road allowance, sorry, that it would leave access to ATV traffic and that type of recreational traffic that would then potentially extend liability back to the county. This particular road allowance intersects with West Mountain Road. And when you turn onto the road allowance, you turn into a residence. So I just don't see ATV traffic going through somebody's yard to access the road allowance on the other side. And I'm sorry I don't have a map here for you guys to see, but if you can imagine the road allowance intersecting West Mountain Road, there's about 500 meters of a residence property. So his laneway is technically the road allowance. But with a blue sign there and a, beware a dog and private property, I just can't see any traffic coming down that laneway onto the road allowance. So at the end of the day, his project is slated for Monday. He started this back in December, and now he's under the gun a little bit because he's got a contractor lined up to do the work, and he's being told that he can only create a 2-meter buffer. So I'm asking council to have some understanding and give direction to administration to work with the landowner so that he can accomplish what he's trying to accomplish, and that's just to create a buffer so that dead trees don't fall on his fence.
Question I have for administration, given we're looking at offering him a 2-meter buffer instead of something wide enough to actually be able to get the equipment in to do the job and come back out, what's, I don't know, the reasoning or the expectation on the landowner for being able to work in that small kind of laneway? I do understand, you got a 2-meter laneway, especially if you're trying to remove deadfall and stuff out of there to help prevent. It doesn't leave a whole lot of room. Or I guess even what the perceived liability on the municipality would be.
To the chair, I have to go out and see for myself. I was not involved in the discussion with the landowner. I promised Councillor Deane that I'll try to find time tomorrow to go meet and see if there's any further variance we can make to the current variance that we provide to the landowner. I can't speak to the exact reasoning behind the 2 meters.
Councillor Coulson had his hand up first, and over to Councillor Prestige and Councillor Deane.
Yeah, through the chair to administration. From what Councillor Deane said, that this is access to a grazing lease?
No.
Or is this his property?
The road allowance abuts a grazing lease that he has the lease for.
So he wants to put the fence down for the purpose of the grazing lease?
Correct.
Okay, so there's a key thing too. Grazing leases do have a consideration that the person who has a grazing lease can, and I'm not sure what the distance is, but I think it's 4 meters that they can take of vegetation on the grazing lease for their fences. So I'm not sure what's going on here. I think the conversation needs to be what is he allowed to do on his grazing lease? Because most of us that have grazing leases, we have a 4-meter right-of-way that we're allowed to put on the grazing lease, but we would not be putting it on a road allowance.
I have a question. You're talking about 4. Okay, I don't know here, but are we talking 4 meters? Are you talking the fence at 2 meters on each side?
No, you're talking 4 meters, 4 full
8.
meters of the legal land description.
From the boundary.
From the boundary.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Prestige and Councillor Deane.
Through the chair to Councillor Deane. The road right away that's there now, is it totally treed, or is there open areas in it, or
Yeah.
how does it look?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So, it's varied, but right now, the center, a road allowance, I think it's 66 feet wide, right?
30 meters.
30 meters, okay. So I would say the center 20 meters for about half a mile is clear. So if an ATV wanted to go on there, they'd be gone.
Yeah. So the ATV thing is not an issue.
No, I don't see it. And in fact, what the first variance came back with, so there was 2 meters he was allowed, and the stumps were to be left about 1 meter high. And the logging contractor is saying that a meter-high stump is too high for his equipment to get in there, but he'd leave it, 2 feet high. So we're not talking about logging and then having a cat come in there and creating a highway. The highway, if you will, is that 4 meters that you talk about on the other side of the fence. So once he clears this, this deadfall, if you will, he's gonna have a 4-meter trail on his side of the fence on the grazing lease. That's probably more likely that's where the ATV traffic would go.
Do you have more follow-up there, Councillor Deane? I know your hand was up, or was that?
I just wanted to talk about that stumpage. So I guess the bottom line is, I apologize to Mr. Zhang because he wasn't aware that I was going to bring this up, and I didn't have a chance to brief you on it. But I think if a person just went out there and had a look, you'd see that what this landowner is trying to do is pretty reasonable. And right now, what the response he's getting from our county administration is, in my opinion, is not reasonable. So,
Councillor Williams.
I thought when we talked about this before, Councillor Kukin actually made a pretty good point there, because he said there's a road allowance by his place that's blocked off. Like the expectation, if we were concerned about traffic, make it that they have to block it off. I think there's some wiggle room there on getting it done. It sounds like it's not very accessible anyways. I'd be in support of trying to come to something, that's for sure.
yeah, you got to drive right through this person's yard. Like, I just don't see anybody doing that.
Okay, so this is your RFD. Would you like to make a motion, Councillor Deane, coming out of this?
Yeah, I would. I'm just not sure what the motion should be. Is it to direct administration to consult with the landowner and come up with a reasonable set of terms? Is that what we're looking for?
That work for administration?
Does that work for you, Jeff?
Yes, and I already said to Councillor Deane, I'll try to find some time to
Okay.
call it. I wasn't directly involved in the dealing,
Right.
nor should I meddling every matter in infrastructure
Fair
services.
enough.
So that motion would certainly work.
Okay, do you want me to repeat it? Okay, so move that council directs administration to work with the landowner in question to come up with a reasonable set of variances to allow him to clear deadfall off of the road allowance.
Thank you. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's passed. Moving along, 10.1, correspondence and information items. Anything in there council wants to discuss, talk about? Councillor Deane?
Move that council accept the correspondence and information items as circulated.
Thank you, Councillor. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Perfect, that's carried. 11.1, council reports and questions. Councillor Burrows, you're online. I'll start with you.
Okay, that's good, because there was one thing I was trying to highlight in the correspondence, and it was on the mature asset strategy. So I hope that everybody's had a chance to look at that, and I'll get into it at the end. The holidays have been kind of long, so the only thing I have to report on the Woodlands side is the AFPA forestry dinner that I attended on behalf of Woodlands County, and I think it was an excellent opportunity to get together with all of the forestry industry and people that are involved in that particular resource development in the county. And it is a big reason why we have a lot of industry here in the Woodlands and Whitecourt area. So really appreciate the opportunity to do that. And I got a chance to talk about, I'll move on to kind of an RMA update. I got a chance to talk about the, for those of you that are in the know, we have a wildfire working group. I actually chaired that group with RMA, and we're going to have some recommendations coming out on that. It has to go to the board for approval yet and have some discussion around it, but we did the final wrap-up meeting for that on the 7th. And I think there's some really good recommendations. And I think based on everything that's in the news, wildfire is a huge issue facing municipalities on the economic development side. And just as an interesting aside, we were talking about the availability of wildfire insurance on a new build. So will the banks stop issuing mortgages if they can't get coverage on builds that don't have wildfire coverage? And that's going to be an interesting conversation coming forward out of all of this, because the insurance market is starting to dry up on the wildfire side. The other thing that I wanted to highlight was that mature asset strategy. It was item 1 on the correspondence. I hope everybody's had a chance to have a look at that. The reason that this is important is, and Woodlands is right on the cusp of where this mature asset strategy process would take place. But oil and gas, and again, we acknowledge that there are lots of good oil and gas operators, and we're pro oil and gas, but there are some serious shortfalls in unpaid taxes to the tune of very close to $500 million across the province right now. And oil and gas companies have managed to make a case to the province that municipal taxation is cutting into their viability and profitability. So that resulted in a mature asset strategy, and that would effectively, it's basically from Woodlands down to the southern area of Alberta that would be wrapped up in that zone. And you would see a reduction in assessment on those mature assets. And if you have a reduction in assessment on those, since we only have the non-residential subclass, that would have anything forestry fall into the oil and gas side as well. And what you would start to see is the tax rates in the municipalities would have to go up a little bit, and that would result in a shift of the tax burden over to non-oil and gas type of arrangements, which would be a very detrimental effect to some of our mills and forestry people. So just so that everybody gets up to speed on that, if you haven't read it, have a read. That's it for my report.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions for Councillor Bros? Not seeing any. Councillor Prestige?
On January 8th, I attended that Alberta Forestry Association dinner myself too. It went very well. We had a really good conversation with the mill managers, and especially Hardeep out at West Fraser. There's some things that we're going to be working on with him on fly ash and that kind of stuff. So see where that goes. Also, I had a chance to talk to Mr. Putsky, and something that I don't think council knows is the fire chief in Blue Ridge, Richie Wilson, works at ANC. If he needs time off to go fight fire, like he was gone for 2 weeks last year, ANC gives him the time off. There's not very many companies that will do that. So I think as council, we should recognize ANC for doing that, because it makes a big difference. And then the 10th, we had what we call in our growth is NRAD. It's the project that we're working on to do emissions education. So we're just getting going on that. We're working with a bunch of presenters, industry presenters that want to come and do presentations at this, and we're going to hold it someplace in this area. And we get really good response with the presentation. So we're just getting started on that. We're going to probably do it later this summer. And yesterday we had our Ag Services Board meeting. 'Cause I'm just new to this board, so everything is kind of new for me, but it's very interesting. See if I can pick up more stuff on it. And one of the things, we had a presentation from it's called Grow. It's a, it does, what do you call it?
Research.
Yes. So part of that was the fly ash that's coming from West Fraser. We're gonna do a test plot to see if that can be used as like a lime for farming. So it's kind of really interesting and see if it works or not. If it does, it helps our mill at West Fraser, and it'll help other mills too. But there's issues with it. If the fly ash has too many heavy metals in it, then you gotta be careful where you apply it on the land. You can't apply it on grass. If you're gonna have cows on it, it has to be incorporated in the ground. So, that kind of thing. And that was it.
Any questions for Councillor Prestige? Councillor Willem?
Probably a silly question, but what's fly ash? I don't know what that is.
When, like, with West Fraser, they burn the hog fuel, like the bark that comes off the tree,
Okay.
and they burn the bark to make steam to use in the kilns to dry the lumber out.
Oh, okay.
And this is a
It's the
byproduct.
ash.
So like they're using the hog fuel as a resource, but then they can't get rid of the fly ash. So it has to go to the landfill. So it's just seeing if we can put one more use to that product.
Thank you. Councillor Williams?
The only thing that I've attended since the holidays all started was I was invited to a Legion meeting actually yesterday, and kind of at that meeting they went over a bunch of other stuff, but where they asked me to come was about that digital sign for Assiniboine, and they expressed the disappointment in the RFD and the relevant information that was missing from that RFD, and where they got some of the information from, they were never talked to. They had a lot of concerns with it, so I encouraged them to write some emails so they could get that out to everybody on council and administration as well. So we might be seeing some emails come from that direction, but yeah, otherwise there was a pretty uneventful meeting. It was good, but that's all I've attended since the holidays.
Any questions, Councillor Williams? Councillor Deane?
Thanks. So to recap chronologically, December 18th, I attended the co-council meeting with other members of our council. And then on the 8th, along with Councillor Burrows and Koken and Prestige, I was at the AFPA dinner, and as Bruce had indicated, it was a good opportunity to network with those folks, especially our local folks. And, coming out of that, on the 14th, we had an ASB meeting, as Councillor Prestige indicated, and a couple of people that were in attendance on behalf of CANFOR attended our ASB meeting. We are looking to come up with a scale in the Fort Assiniboine area, and CANFOR has a scale, and so they're going to see if they can't come up with a process that will allow local area producers to use that scale to weigh, hay and grain, etc., and cattle. So all of those networking linkages help in that regard. On the 9th, I attended a community services meeting, and then yesterday, along with rest council, had a meeting with our prospective CAO to try and see where we can help him before he starts. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Deane? Councillor Wilhelm?
So I had two meetings since the holidays. One was the Woodlands Community Services meeting. Pretty light agenda on that one, but we did approve another bursary for a Woodlands resident student going to trade school again. So that continues to be a really well applied for program that we do, and the numbers are just increasing year over year. So it's good to see from our young people in our community applying for that and becoming successful. And then last night, I guess, I went to Whitecourt Community Services meeting, and we approved or motion to go to Whitecourt Town Council for $18,000 worth of FCSS grants for their municipality. So a good amount of funding going into some needed services in Whitecourt. So other than that, it was pretty light for myself.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Wilhelm? Councillor Presley?
Through the chair to Jeremy, how many bursaries are we doing?
I got a summary here.
12.
12, I think.
Yeah, 12. Yeah, I think it was 12 last year, right?
Yeah.
And then already one this year. So it stays open as the school cycles happen. I think you typically get more in the fall than we do in the winter session.
When I was on that board, we were lucky to get 2 or 3.
Yeah, so it's going really well.
That's great.
Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, I attended Barnett FCSS meeting and luncheon on the 23rd of December, and then after that, my work started again on the 6th of January, and that came from a bunch of critiquing I requested now that I'm chair of growth. I was really frustrated with my own inadequacy in the media marketing area, so what I did was I put out a request to have our whole Wild program and our website and have a look at, have it critiqued to see, if it was what we have heard from the old committee. And the unfortunate thing is it's inadequate. It doesn't work. The way that we're doing our media marketing for tourism is not adequate. So what I did then on the 6th of January, I met with a media marketing specialist to understand better what we needed to do, and have a really comprehensive look at how we can do a better job for both the municipality in the economic development side and the tourism side, and also for that particular area of tourism which Wild deals with. So then on the 7th of January, I met with her again and the executive director to set up an agenda to update the board on the findings and start to set some priorities and see if how we can actually fund this, because the cost of doing some of this is going to be pretty high. And now that the government's chose not to fund regional economic development alliances the way they used to, we're going to try to figure out a way to fund that website and growth website as well. On the 8th, I attended the AFPA supper with Bruce and Al and John, and that was a great meeting. What we learned there has already been put out into the service board, and the other one that I spoke with them about was to see if we could start to get some of these mills to use some of their dollars to sponsor our regional economic development program, both in what we're trying to do as growth in this energy and emissions symposium that we're trying to put on. And it's really been pushed by some of the things that developed here at this board table, especially when John came, was really tenacious with the SMR thing. So now what we're looking at is energy and emissions adapting to our the changing global, the changes in our global situation. And so that was some of the things that we discussed even at the AFPA. So there's a lot of things that start to work together when you attend these things, and new people, new ideas come into play. On the 9th, I attended the community services meeting, and I think Jeremy and Al have spoke to that enough. On the 10th, we had that committee meeting for the emissions and energy here in Whitecourt. On the 13th, I was at an FCSS building committee meeting. We have an issue now with the current building that we're operating out of in Barrhead is not big enough for all of the services that they're supplying, plus the landlord. Our lease is going to be renewed, and the landlord that we have currently is charging us a lot of money for what we feel is not an adequate building. So we had a meeting to have a look at a bunch of other facilities. And then on the 14th, we had our ASB meeting, and that was really good because, like Bruce said, Gateway Research Organization, we gave them the thought of doing some test work with that with the ash, and also we discussed fiber with the hog fuel, which potentially could be used in some of the low fiber lands that currently the gray wood soils are, because they have way too much of that hog fuel. So all we do is give that to the research people and the universities, and we already have a guy that's committed to doing some test plots. So it didn't take very long to move that wheel, which was great. The thing was, we struggled to understand the VSI program for a number of years, and one of our members at large, Ryan McLaughlin, he actually went up and came back with a number of discoveries and gave us a pretty comprehensive report. And we discovered that it's pretty difficult for you to get any policy change or anything to happen when you have grain farmers, beekeepers, and alpaca producers that dominate that VSI board. And so I think there were two, he said, what was it? There were two livestock producers that were represented there.
Yeah.
And so I'm really happy Ryan's there, because he's the type of guy that'll dig in and make change happen. So kudos to him. Then I did sit in on the onboarding session with Matthew, which was great. I think we had some pretty good discussion there, and we're hoping that leads to a nice transition when our esteemed leader right now steps back and observes. So thank you very much for that, because it was a good session, and that's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor? Go ahead.
Just for the people watching, maybe explain what VSI is.
Well, that's the Veterinary Services Program, and the intent of the program was always to encourage young veterinarians into the big animal practice. It's not a problem getting vets to go into small animal, but we have a real struggle in agriculture keeping a lot of the big animal vets in these rural areas. So, and Ryan even said that it's really more difficult on this side, because he has to go all the way over to Edson to get vets, and there's very few that want to do big animal practice anymore. So that VSI program was intended to help that happen.
I can definitely say the Merithorpe Vet Clinic, I know they do large animal utilizing power too, so.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Councillor Coogan? Not seeing any. Just touch over a couple of things I did that weren't covered from the others. I just want to again give a kudos to Ryan. He was a very good report that he gave us, and for his first time being part of that committee, he was very impressed. Follow up with our meeting for Matthew Ferris, just for council, one of the requests to make sure that he is currently set up with the county email and phone. The phone portion they're working, he is going to be continuing his current number with Laxing Ann. They're working on a release so he can run that this way. He is set up with the county email address at this point. Thank you to administration for accommodating that. So if we have, I guess, communications or stuff going back and forth, I've been starting to CC him on the communications to keep him apprised of what's going on. I would recommend council, kind of use that opportunity to start keeping him updated. We had an MPC meeting here right before this meeting. Approved a couple quick subdivisions. Last week I was graciously asked to go to the Chamber of Commerce AGM, which I had the opportunity to swear in the new members. We had a presentation there from Arnold Veerson showed up, talking about a lot of what they're seeing on the federal stance, and just kind of an update in general from around the area. One of the conversations I did have after the meeting, though, with a lady from the Boys and Girls Club for here in Whitecourt, I mean, it's obviously something, it's in the town, but it is utilized by youth from both communities, is their struggle right now finding grant funding. They typically have some grant funding, I believe, is coming from the federal side, is that the federal or the provincial side? She was talking with Arnold, so I'm going to assume federal side, and it's something they've seen year over year over year, and this year it just wasn't there. So there was some concern about the program going forward. I know he was going to look into it and get back to them. She had said that she had reached out to Heather, so I'm assuming that, you know, as far as how we might be able to help support the program as well, and as well with the town of Whitecourt. So I'm assuming that she has. If not, I'm assuming that at some point Heather will end up having contact with her and, you know, trying to see where we can support that program. I mean, anything we can do, I believe, to support youth in the area is definitely good. And a couple other ones. Unfortunately, I showed up to the ASB meeting. I had to drop out just before Can 4's presentation because I also had a meeting with MLA Long and the Friends of Whitecourt Society. They're the auxiliary of the hospital. They're kind of talking about some of the funding that they, or fundraising they've done, and some of the programs and the initiatives they've helped in the past. And currently they're in a position where it sounds like they have raised the funds for a new CT machine for the area, and they're trying to work with obviously MLA Long and his role with the rural health and AHS to try to make that come to fruition here. So here's you know, hoping for that conversation we did have with them. They do have another meeting with AHS coming up, I believe, middle of February. I did express that after that meeting, if they are needing a letter of support from this council to reach out to the counties. I don't believe anybody in the room here would have a concern with drafting a support letter or a letter for the group that could possibly benefit the hospital here. So if that ask comes, just so you guys know, it's not a financial ask, it's just a letter of support and what we can do and provide, and, you know, showing the benefit that gives towards our residents and our community as well. And that is what I have. Any questions for me? Councillor Deane?
Not so much a question, but just a follow-up on that CT scan. So it's my understanding, as you say, the Friends of Whitecourt have the funds to not only purchase the CT scanner, but also to purchase some sort of a structure for it to be housed in.
As for the conversation they had, that's kind of in the air right now. I believe they have the funds for it. They're just not sure which route they're going to go as far as if it's going to be off this hospital developing something, or, you know, in a different facility, or they have lots of ideas, but they need to get the blessing from AHS and kind of develop how that'll roll out. So, but yeah, they have, I'll say, some of the like the colonoscopy ward there was funded through them. Some of the specialty treadmills have been funded through them. They have done a phenomenal amount through their auxiliary club for the area and for the hospital, and it was, I felt very, very privileged to be asked to sit in that meeting.
Kudos to them.
Not seeing anything else, if I can get a meeting to move the council reports. Councillor Prestige?
Make a motion the council accepts council reports and questions as information.
Thank you, Councillor Prestige. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that one's carried. Move down to CAO Report, 11.6. Mr. Benedetto?
Mr. Reeve and members of council, one of the real challenges that we've been dealing with since really almost all of December and even again in early January is the issue of ice control and the challenges that that's creating on our roads. And the crews have been working hard under Jeff's leadership, extra chipping and trying to get out on the roads to get the roads down to where there's a little bit of aggregate showing, give people a little bit improve traction. But it's hugely challenging when we get such warm weather and we have melts and it all pools in the middle of the roads. So I don't know if you have any questions there, but the crews are working is very hard under adverse conditions to try to make our roads as passable and as safe as they can be. And it's taken a lot of extra effort. You're probably going to have some budgetary hits down the road because we're extra chips and extra materials, and it's well in excess of a normal year at this point, and we're only in the middle of January. So compliments to the crews, and so we're trying hard to make the best of a difficult situation. The work is continuing. You remember through last year, administration talked to council about some opportunities to improve our fleet with buying premium used equipment at a far significantly reduced cost over brand new. And through some diligent research, et cetera, Infrastructure Services have purchased a belly dump, and it's a very good unit in good shape at a fraction of the cost of a new unit. So that's going to be added to our fleet for the department to have access to for the upcoming graveling and construction season. The health and safety audit has been completed. This one was an internal one. We've passed the audit. There are some things that need to be reviewed. Next year will be more onerous because it will be an external health and safety audit. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight, there are many subcategories in the audit tool, and the score from leadership went from 65% to 85%. So I compliment my colleagues for being out and about. We put in commitment statements to health and safety and other initiatives and active participation in safety meetings and carrying that message out to everybody in the organization. So it's really set a different foundation for us to move forward. The other piece of news on that front is the Workers' Compensation Board looks at industry averages, and if you're worse, you pay a surplus, and if you're better than industry average, you get discounts. And are based on the reduced claims, Woodlands County is now in the category of being below industry average and getting the benefit of some reduced WCB rates. So we're starting to see some real benefits, and you are supportive through the budget of some enhancements to the health and safety program. So that will produce some further benefits down the road. On terms of protective services, we're in the process of sending letters of notification to our industries and our businesses about the availability of the aerial tower pumper for selected calls, et cetera. And there's been very positive feedback, particularly from some of the industries that had concerns over that apparatus being available. So we're rolling that out, and the feedback's been very positive. There's been talk about the Forestry Association dinner, and yes, a great opportunity to mix with our local senior leaders in those plants. The one other issue that they did raise a concern about is the threat of these U.S. tariffs on soft lumber, and that's a very real concern. I think the other issues have been covered off extremely well. The departments, with the approval of the budget, are already starting to prepare to deliver the budget programs and services and capital projects that you've approved in the budget. So we hope to be rolling those programs and the construction programs, et cetera, out in a timely manner. And we've been trying to do our part with assisting with onboarding of incoming CAO Matthew Ferris. And he's been very keen in terms of asking information, and we've given him some initial big burst of information. And yesterday at senior management team, we were looking at other documents we'd have that would be helpful to him. Some he's asked for, and others that we've identified that we think will be beneficial. So he's been very keen in terms of asking for information, and we're trying to be very accommodating to help get him up to speed as quickly as possible. So with that, if there are any other questions you have, I'd be happy to answer them, but those are the highlights for this period of time.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Benedetto? Seeing any, if I get a motion to move the CAO report? Councillor Coogan?
I'll move that we accept the CAO report as information.
Thank you, Councillor. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. So now we're going to the closed session of our meeting. If I can get a set or motion to go into closed session, and then we'll take a couple minutes here while the cameras are off, take a quick bathroom break and come back. Councillor Deane?
Sure. Move that we move into closed session under FOIPS 25, 17, 21, 27.
Thank you, Councillor. Any discussion to that motion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. We are in closed session at 7:12. We'll see.
One.
Okay, we're back after closed session. It's now 8:45. Got a few motions coming out. Start 12-1 with the Alberta Wildfire Airport lease negotiations. Councillor Deane.
I move that council provides administration direction for the proposed lease option number 3 rate effective April 1st, 2025.
Thank you, Councillor. That I'll call the question. All in favor? No one's carried. 12-2. Again, Councillor Deane for Cutbanks Road update.
Move that council accepts Cutbanks Road update as information.
Thank you. Call the question. All in favor? Councillor Prestige, Old Ferry legislative considerations.
Make a motion that council accept the update as information for Old Ferry Road legislative consideration.
Thank you. Call the question. All in favor? That one's moved. Councillor Burrows, revenue sharing litigation.
Yeah, I would move that council approve the settlement of the revenue sharing litigation as discussed, subject to full and final release approved by county legal counsel.
Thank you. With that, all in favor? That one's carried. 12-5, transitional support and special project support. Councillor Kuchen.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that council appoint Paul Benedetto and Rod Hawken to provide transitional support and special project support for the incoming CEO effective January 27th, 2025, under the direction of incoming CEO Matthew Ferris.
Thank you. All in favor? That one's carried. And 12.6 on the CEO report.
Yeah, just you move a motion to approve the report.
Wait, Councillor Deane.
Move council approves the CEO report for information.
Thank you. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? And one more, number 13.
So I'll try this for council's consideration. The council approved the revised public communication plan focused on budget initiatives and prior year accomplishments, as discussed.
Okay, so you wanted that for 12.6 instead of the CEO report for information?
Well, 12.6, so this would be 12.7. So there's.
Yeah, we didn't have a 12.7 on the agenda, so I can't add a 12.7.
Oh, well, yeah, move it under the CO report then. Under 12.6.
So we have two motions.
Two motions under
Two motions
12.6,
under
accept the
12.6.
report, and then the second motion confirming your direction on
Give
this.
it to Dan so he can read it.
I don't think
Yeah.
I read it right.
So I'll repeat it
Looks like my
again.
writing.
That council approved the revised public communication plan focused on budget initiatives and prior year accomplishments as discussed.
It sounded just like me.
That's a good motion, Devin. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Brings us to number 13. Councillor Prestige.
Make a motion to adjourn.
No discussion on that. All in favor? And we're adjourned at 8:48.
So as you look